2025 meeting. So again, welcome. And I'm excited that we have a quorum today. And I think we're going to have a short but robust discussion session. I think we can do some great brainstorming and planning, and can't wait to hear what you're going to contribute today. So, Ms. Erica, could you please call roll?
Chairperson Dr. Cynthia Villagomez.
Present.
Mr. Robert Dura.
Present.
Mr. Kwame Finney.
Present.
Mr. William Fulton. Ms. Kimberly McNeil. Ms. Sheila Williams. Ms. Annette Wilson.
Present.
Ms. Shanice Wilders.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. I believe we have minutes to adopt from our February meeting. Unless there's discussion, would somebody please make a motion to accept the minutes, approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Ms. Simon, do we need to ask everybody? Yes, okay.
We need a second anyway.
Oh, we need a second.
I'll second.
So for everyone to approve.
Chairperson Cynthia Villagomez. I was muted.
Approve.
Mr. Robert Dura.
Approved.
Mr. Kwame Finney.
Approved.
Ms. Sheila Williams.
Sheila, are you there? Thank you.
Ms. Annette Wilson.
Approved.
Perfect. Great. Thank you, everyone. Well, I'll move on to my updates. I wanted to let the commissioners know that
recording in progress.
Our mapping prejudice project that our committee approved to support is moving along very well. And I think we can maybe take some lessons from what we're doing in the community. So while I haven't been able to get any of the public libraries to support and sponsor either sessions for AAHI or for mapping prejudice, we have had some community-wide meetings for mapping prejudice.
Recording stopped.
At the Center for Design Innovation, and then so far at some local churches. And what we found is that the local church communities are being very responsive. So I'm hoping that all of you might consider sponsoring a mapping prejudice session, since we are one of the main community sponsors for the project. And again, I'll remind you that what it is that, and there are several county and city agencies that have already sponsored the project. Councilperson Scipio, Mayor Pro Tem Dee Adams, they were so supportive from the very beginning. And of course, my co-director of the project, and who initiated it and asked me to join him, Dr. Russ Smith, spoke about it last year at the Fair Housing Summit. So we are looking at the racist language in the covenant deeds, so property deeds. And of course, we had to get the permission from the registrar's office. They were with us from the beginning. And so the county sent like just tons and tons of files of all the deeds on file from I think the early 20th century through to about 1970. So far we have various community members, and then all of our interns, the interns that are aligned to our commission here, they've gone through hundreds and hundreds of deeds, and they're finding this racist language where it restricts African Americans from buying not just property for homes, but also cemetery lots. And so the project is aligned with the original project from the University of Minnesota. And Minnesota has done some really great things with their data. They've created maps. They've developed some talking sessions for restorative justice that are that involve not just people in Minnesota and the Twin Cities there, but really people from across the country. But as I've been to these events, and I'm seeing people in the community that are really interested to support our community, right? So, and in some ways, I want to just bring in what I've learned over really the last month. So Mr. Finney and I have been speaking on and off about the legacy of Ms. Mady Hall Zuma. And she really is one of the superstars that have come out of our community. I know she was a member at Miss Annette Wilson's church. You know, her family was, I think, one of the originating sponsors. And of course, she and her husband, Dr. Alfred Zuma, were one of the power couples in the early mid 20th century. And she did so many wonderful things in our community with art and raising money for the Black community, for social welfare programs, you know, here in town, but then also in South Africa. And of course, she was close friends with Mary McLeod Bethune, Dorothy Height. They just were doing wonderful things. And so, you know, she networked with Black and white church members, with the Y, with the AKAs, whatever she could do to bring support to our local Black community, to fight racism, segregation, poverty, and then really to connect our Black community, not just regionally and nationally, but globally. And so I just want to invite you to kind of take her as our role model. And in saying that, I started to think and pray about her legacy. Maybe AAHI could do something where we could sponsor a community program. Durham did just that a few years ago through their county library. Carter Q, who used to be the archivist in O'Kelly Library and now works for Durham County Library System, organized a day-long conference on Miss Mady and invited a wonderful scholar, Dr. Hendricks, who knew Miss Mady herself because of her aunts. And she wrote, she's a historian, a PhD. She wrote a beautiful historical biography on her. And so they did a day-long event, but because there are still people here who knew her church is alive and thriving. I'm just wondering if we could think about, you know, how we could hold sessions, and people who either knew about her or knew her, they could give their oral history. So that's just a thought. But I actually connected through our interns. Yesterday we had our social justice conference on our campus. And so the students were talking about the Mapping Prejudice project, but they also, two of the young ladies who are our interns, discussed Miss Mady, and again, how not just what she contributed, but how we could learn from her, how we could emulate what she accomplished to move projects forward and to really support the community with art. You know, she was a wonderful artist and playwright and musician, and people would come out to her performances. She would use them as fundraisers. Um, and so, you know, I feel like we should have a Miss Mady Hall Zuma Day. And of course, she was an alumna of WSSU. Her father taught physiology and was one of the best friends of Dr. Simon Green Atkins. So, I mean, I'm wondering if that would be a way to get our community involved and support us, if we could be thinking about sponsoring events in some capacity where we would be celebrating the legacy of our elders. So that's just one thought. Another thing is, you know, we have sponsored a number of wonderful projects: the Undesigned, the Red Line, the Rooted in Race, the We Built This, and now Mapping Prejudice. And so, you know, when we do sponsor these, we do want to maximize the potential of the networking we can do through these projects to bring attention to our mission, to our goals. And I really try to do that. But beyond that, I think we need to just be like Miss Mady, you know, at church, wherever you socialize. I actually am going to be trying to schedule a oral history with a lady who was one of the first Black DJs here in town. And I happened to meet her at her great grandbaby's baptism, or not baptism, but dedication. And I might have mentioned this, I can't remember, but we're going to get her in. And she graduated from Winston-Salem State at the same time as one of her grandkids, I think. But wherever we go, we should continue to just spread the good word about the work we do. I also know that some wonderful things are happening. So Cheryl Harry, of course, has just really picked things up with Triad Cultural Arts. They had the wonderful grand opening of the shotgun houses. I had the real blessing to see Councilperson Scipio there. She was just delighted. And they're planning to open up a space maybe for storytelling and performances and that kind of thing, you know. So I think we're never in competition with our fellow groups and organizations that are supporting the Black community, the legacy, the history in all sorts of ways. And I think that down the line, of course, I will probably be rotated out of AHI, but by the time that Cheryl and company at Triad Arts is able to open up a space like that, that could be a perfect place for AHI to host events and tell people about our work and hopefully do some recording sessions. So that's sort of what I have. I will also say, if you do have people in line that you want to have us record, I do still have interns, especially my student Rakisha Glenn, who is just thrilled to do oral histories. She's a little bit older student, and she's returning to school. She wants to get her master's in public history, and she's from Winston, so she has very deep roots here, knows a lot of people, and she would just love to do the interviewing of our elders. So, you know, things are sort of starting to wind down at Winston-Salem State, and we may not have the interns over the summer, but Mr. Flynn will be around, I will be around, and so the summer could be a perfect time to get people onto campus and into our recording studio, or for us to deploy out and meet people where they are. Especially our elders who might be immobile, might have mobility issues. we can definitely in the summer go to them. So that's what I have to share. I hope I have inspired some creative thoughts about how we can move AHI forward. And I'm always here to support you. So you all have my contact information. Please reach out if I can help you with anything. So thank you for listening. And Dr. Christian, that's all that I have to share. So we can move on to your director's updates.
Thank you. As I shared with you all, we do have our Fair Housing Summit coming up on the 24th. And again, you all are invited to participate, to come out and share in that event. It should be another awesome event. Again, it is our 19th annual, so we're looking forward to that. And also tomorrow at 11:30, we're having our Twin City Trailblazers event at the Delta Fine Arts Center, in which we are recognizing a number of outstanding women who have done and is doing a phenomenal job in our communities. So again, that will take place tomorrow. And we just had one final note. We just had our student relations banquet last week. It was an outstanding event, more than 500 plus people there. We were able to recognize a student from each of our schools, our public school, as well as a number of our private schools. So we were very excited to have a wonderful event. And again, we're just looking forward to the great event that's going to take place tomorrow, as well as the Fair Housing Summit later this month. That's all that I have.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any updates from our staff and support from the city?
No additional reports at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. Well then, commissioners, do you have any suggestions or ideas? We have about 20 minutes. We don't have to stay on 20 minutes, but we have 20 minutes to think out loud together and dream and brainstorm. Any updates from our commissioners?
I have a question. Did we ever complete the list of people that signed up at Juneteenth last year, contacting them and arranging oral histories for them?
That's a good question, Ms. Wilson, and unfortunately, no. Ms. Carlin and I just weren't able to work on that with all that I went through with my mom's health, starting in the end of June and then with her passing. So I did think about that, and that would be one way for us to get some histories when things slow down just a little bit more at work here. I'll work with Carlin on that.
Okay, thank you.
Miss Annette, did you know Miss Mady? Did you ever interact with her at church?
I knew her from church, but of course, I was a much younger person, and so I really wasn't as familiar with all the major contributions she made during her lifetime until when I participated on the Historic Commission review of nominees for the historical markers. There was a presentation made about her where I learned quite a bit about her and the significance she played. But as a person growing up in the city, I did not know her that well. But I do remember seeing her at church, that kind of thing.
would you be willing for one of us, maybe Mr. Finney, um to record you talking about your memories of her?
I really don't think I have anything that would warrant a recording other than to say I just knew who she was. So unfortunately, I did not know her or her activities growing up. So I'm still willing to work with someone. There was a man who presented on her behalf or on her nomination at the historic committee, and he had a wonderful packet of information. I'll be happy to check back with Michelle in that office because I do have the packet somewhere here to see if maybe that person is still available. That maybe we could work on some type of program to honor her and her work. But I personally don't have firsthand knowledge of it.
Thank you,
But I
Miss.
know that there was a packet already put together when they did her nomination for a marker at her home on Cameron Avenue.
And I know our intern Rakisha was able to find that at least what they wrote up, the PDF that the Historic Resources Commission, whenever they do one of those markers, they always then have a
Right.
PDF. So Rakisha was able to find that. Do you think your church would be interested in sponsoring some kind of a citywide event, like, you know, a day for people to come together and talk about her and any of the folks that might have had lots of interaction or maybe heard about her? It's, for me, it was just so sad to see that even on our campus, with her being an alumna, with her father being one of Dr. Atkins' best friends, probably one of the first physiology professors on campus, that even in our department, where we have several people who are specialists on South Africa, and yet we never hear about it. And Rakisha said that she would have loved to have learned about her, for instance, during Black History Month in our public schools, because Rakisha went to all public schools, you know, kindergarten through high school here in town. And she said nobody ever brought up Mrs. Hall Zuma, which is really sad because she was literally one of the best known people and really a real powerhouse with her husband. Yeah, it's such a privilege and honor that we can call her, you know, our elder and member of our community. But yeah, it may take a little bit of time to organize, but I think it would be great if we could do something comparable to what Durham's county library did on her behalf.
I would be glad to speak to the pastor and the trustees about it again. Unfortunately, most of the people who knew her have already passed. I really, as I said, what I've learned about her in recent years, unfortunately. And I would think even so much, even within the sorority, the people that knew her have already passed.
Yeah.
But again, I would be happy to work with someone on the project, and I'm sure that the church would be happy to support it. But again, I can't. Well, I would think that they would because it is part of our history as well. So I'll be happy to work with someone on that.
Thank you. And yeah, as I read Dr. Hendrick's book, I was very inspired because Miss Mady was a very deep woman of faith, and that her faith really, she was really nurtured in your church, and her mother was really, you know, an exemplary Black club woman in a Christian context. And so she learned from her mother how to be entrepreneurial. Her mother told her, you know, make money, keep a little for yourself, and give most of it away. So, of course, her parents were very prosperous. Her father was the first Black physician in town, and they bought up properties not only here but in other places and rented out spaces and built properties for people before Jim Crow and before the segregation ordinances and deeds came in. So she was buying property from the Reynolds and others, and just very interesting. So Mady saw all of that, but what really grounded her was her Christian faith. She prayed about everything. So I want to follow up, and I think my two students, Rakisha and Tiani, who've been working on her, I think that we might even be able to find things in our archive, WSSU, like letters. But as a church historian, I'm most interested in how her faith really framed who she was and motivated her, and really drove her to be the civil rights activist that she was. And because we know that often our civil rights leaders and heroes and heroines, they were deep people of faith, but oftentimes the faith component is taken out of their biographies when you read about them online and in newspapers and whatnot. So I'm particularly interested in that, and I'm going to be working on that, since one of my overall projects has been to look at the economic impact of AME Zion leaders in town, and because they were so important, like Dr. Atkins, in helping to create a Black economic infrastructure and business. I mean, it wasn't, of course, only AME Zion folks, but they were quite instrumental, and so much came out of that, whether it was, our first hospital, Slater Hospital, or libraries that came out of the Black club women, like Mrs. Hall, Mady's mother, raising funds and then establishing the first Black libraries in church basements and that kind of thing, and doing book drives. And it's just phenomenal when you read about what they do. But if your church could sponsor something, I promise you that we would not hide the Christian component of all of her work. And of course, her husband being the first president of the African National Congress, and he himself was a deep person of faith. And I'm not sure if that story is told either, but just really an interesting couple, and it's such a blessing that they're part of our local history. So we'll work on it. Thank you so much. Well, are there any other ideas or updates? I know that you all might have been doing a lot behind the scenes since we met 2 months ago. Mr. Finney, do you have any updates for us?
I have Jim speaking. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you all hear him okay? Yes. Yes, they can hear you.
Yes. I recently also had a bad bout with the flu, but I'm over it now. I have an interview in progress as we speak. I spoke with the potential client's daughter today, and we're getting ready to do an outline for her interview. I spoke with Tom Flynn last week, and he pointed out the effects of the interns as well, and everything was a go. So we're just needing to schedule a date when that can happen. I have a couple of irons in the fire, you might say, but everything is pending, but there's still a go, no go sometimes.
Perfect. Well, and this summer may be a really good time for us to try to get a lot of those in, because it'll be easier to get people onto campus. We teach a lot of summer school, but mostly online classes. So faculty and staff are around, the library is open, but most of the students are actually taking classes. They go back home. And I won't be doing a lot of traveling this summer. I won't be going back to San Diego like I usually do, so I should be around most of the summer to help with those sorts of things. So that's exciting. Thank you so much. Oh, Miss Sheila, Mr. Robert, any ideas or
Well, I'm
update?
kind of curious. Kwame and I had worked on some histories of, kind of what it was like growing up here and being here and that sort of thing. And I wondered uh, what your sort of itinerary was about getting that complete or getting us to a fuller sort of presentation of those ideas.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think we said we were going to schedule sort of session 2. So that's really up to you, gentlemen, and I'll support you with that. We just need to work with Mr. Flynn and see when we can get in. So, so that really is up to both of you. But yeah, I think you both have great things to share, and we might turn it around because Mr. Quammen was mostly interviewing you, but maybe you can interview him too down the line.
Yeah. How about that? And then what's the calendar like for the committee going forward?
Well, so far, and I did talk to Councilperson Scipio when she and I went to the Shotgun House grand opening, and she would love to see us meeting face to face downtown. And she feels that, there'll be good energy if we do that. And so, some of us might rotate out, but we might not. Because if they're not finding people to replace us or approving people to replace us, we potentially could stay on. Miss Annette is with us. She's irreplaceable. So maybe she gets to stay on forever because she's irreplaceable. And I mean that with all
Not
sincerity.
hardly.
But of course, when those of us who are officially will eventually rotate out because we've served our terms, we can still continue to be doing these interviews and working with Mr. Flynn because of the official legal relationship between WSSU as the institutional sponsor for AAHI in terms of the recordings and then posting the recordings and any digitized images at what is it called? Digital NC. So that was all put into place a few years back. There was a memorandum of understanding, and the university's lawyers and the city's lawyers worked all that out. So I'm not leaving WSSU, and I don't think Mr. Flynn will be. So, of course, we will continue our work behind the scenes and carrying on with the oral histories that we can do, even if we're not officially members anymore. So, I would just encourage you all to think about who you would want to prioritize, to interview. And just know that the summer would be a great time. I haven't had luck with the local libraries, but I am seeing that churches could be a possible place. And there was one thing I forgot to mention. So Centenary United Methodist Church downtown sponsored a Mapping Prejudice session because they have I think it's a reconciliation ministries. So we had a wonderful turnout of about 15 people who were so engaged and really, really cared about our project. I met a gentleman, Mr. Davis, who's a member of that church, and he's mid 70s, maybe pushing 80. Interestingly, he was one of the very first white gentlemen to attend WSSU when it integrated, and he grew up in town. I think he said he attended Parkland, And he made the conscious choice to attend WSSU as a Caucasian young man because he really supported civil rights and our Black community. And he wanted to, feel this experience of actually being a minority within a community. And so he loved his time there, and he's remained a big supporter of our school. And he's very interested in giving his history. And so I thought that could be a very kind of interesting contribution. Maybe he'd be interviewed, for instance, by Mr. Finney. We'll see, but I'm working on that. So I would just say again, use your connections. That's one reason that we were all nominated. And when Councilperson Scipio envisioned this whole commission and our work, she really, thought about each of us because of our connections. And, we each are connected to our community in special ways. And so that's my hope and prayer, that we'll all continue to network and use our connections so we can move this wonderful, the wonderful goals and mission forward of AHI. So we have 1 minute. I think Miss Sheila had a question, and I definitely didn't want to cut her off. Are you there, Sheila?
I don't have a question. I am going to have to jump off. Just want to know, whatever you do, I'll support it. I don't have a lot of ideas, but I want to be involved. I want to help out, do whatever it takes to make the community successful. But I do have another meeting. I'm so sorry I got to jump off like in just a minute.
No problem, Sheila. Well, thank you so much. And we probably are near the end. Are there any other questions or suggestions?
Not for me.
All right. Well, if you do have any requests, suggestions, questions, please reach out to me. I unfortunately forgot to check the date of our May meeting. Dr. Christian or Miss Simon, do you know what the date is for the first Wednesday in May?
May 7th.
May 7th? Okay. Thank you. So we will reconvene on Wednesday, May 7th. And in the meantime, if you have anything to share, just let me know. Any requests, I'll be happy to support you. Thank you so much. It was great to be with you all. I hope I'll see you at the Fair Housing Summit later this month. So take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.